Hi, it's Maria, and I'm doing number 44 in Forgiveness to Love. And I'm going to title this one, You Can't Unknow What You Know. And in the last video, in number 43, it was a real eye-opener for many, because once we understand something, we can't be confused. No one can confuse us, actually, because we can't unknow something that we know. It's almost as if someone says, don't think of the color red, or don't think of the elephant in the room, something like that, because whatever we draw our attention to, that's exactly what we focus on. And so when we know truth, then no matter what someone tries to tell us, we don't deviate from it, because we have the answers, right? And so we just keep going. And so in terms of a visual that I've tried to share with you, when I talk about the flying monkeys, and they are just so gross. I mean, they just kind of fly through the air, and you've got the Wicked Witch of the West who flies on her broom, and she's just this kind of ugly looking witch, and cackling and everything. And so she has these minions, and they are the flying monkeys, and they do her dirty work. And so they create a lot of misery for good people, and that's their role, actually. And for many of us, the worst thing that can happen to us is our being silenced, right? Because we are here to tell the truth. We are here to stand up for ourselves. We are here to stand up for our brothers and sisters. We are here as beacons of light, really. I mean, everyone has that potential. And so when we think of how some flying monkeys are actually employees of stores or employees of companies that through which we try to share our message, and yet they are paid by the dark in order to silence us. For instance, if it's something like a YouTube or a Vimeo or a Facebook or an Instagram or something that's a very popular in social media, and it's our way of distributing, and it's our way of disseminating our message, then what happens is they restrict our audience, right? And so just like they will somehow disable our website, like mariahaiti.com. So if I want to put some messages there, and that's what happens, and you wonder, the dark just wants to silence us, right? And the dark wants the dark to stay in the dark. No, the dark wants the light. The dark wants the truth to stay in the dark. Yes. And so you wonder, who are these dark head honchos? Are they really powerful people who have control of the media and stuff? Or are these kind of bullies, as in the wizard, who is a very weak man, right? Although he's full of smoke and loud, a loud voice and telling people what to do. He's just behind the curtain, and he's just kind of like a pitiful man, really. And yet, in my story, well, we all have villains in our stories, right? And so in my story, I have three who would basically do anything for money, right? Anything for a buck. And so I try to think of them as like a demonic Three Stooges. But the Three Stooges were funny, actually, I thought. And so, but these are like the Three Stooges from hell, right? And they kind of are like gross with, warts and worms and horns and a serrated pitchfork, right? Because they work for the dark, or at least their agenda is a dark agenda, because it's about hiding the truth. It's about stealing and thieving and lying and cheating and harming and killing and ruining and destroying. And so when we kind of see this, and we see their role in the play of our lives, because everyone we meet has a role in our life, and so some of those people will help us to grow and to nurture us so that we can become better than who we were. And then we have some of the demonic aspects who actually try to thwart our progress in every and any way they can, right? And if you think about it from a higher perspective, they actually help us grow too, because perhaps in the beginning we might not have wanted to stand up for ourselves. Perhaps we were afraid. Perhaps we were shy. Perhaps we felt vulnerable. And sometimes when we face so much opposition, we then I don't know if it's toughen up, but we become more empowered. And so we have those with the black hats and those with the white hats, and we have the negative and we have the positive, and we have the good and we have the bad. And that's true in any scenario of life, truly. And so you sometimes can visualize the dark. I like to visualize things because it's part of the play, and if you can actually see it in your mind, then it's easier to understand that, and then you can never unknow it, right? Because you've seen it. And so you've got the dark kind of running around like evil little idiots, plotting and planning and how to hurt people and even how to kill people. And so a few weeks ago, I had mentioned this in a video, but I had an eye appointment with an ophthalmologist who happens to be a cousin of mine in Clearwater. And so as I was driving on the highway, there was a truck that came right in front of me, and you couldn't miss it. It was a big white truck, and it had like bright blue writing or something like that. And it had words like Hughes Pest Control, right? Hughes Pest Control. It had We Kill Your Pests, or Let Us Kill Your Pests, or Join Our Family. Well, my sibling's last name is Hughes, right? And then it was Go Team Go. And I thought, this is what children would do, right? This is what evil little, what did I call them? Evil little idiots would strategize and say, oh yeah, well, we're going to really spook her, right? So we're going to get this truck. And I assume that there really is a Hughes Pest Control. And so maybe they paid them to borrow their truck or to have the driver or something drive in front of me. But anyway, it was just too coincidental, and there are no coincidences. And so, of course, this truck was there. And so when I got to my cousin's office, I could just feel that sibling was there, and she was kind of directing him on what to say and what to do. And I thought, here is this very successful physician, and how he would buy into this ridiculous drama it actually saddened me. But also, as we pulled up, there was a white Tesla in the parking lot, and who knows whose it was. But sibling tends to be very ostentatious, and especially, when she's got all of my money and her money and stuff, she kind of wants to rub my nose in it. And so anyway, there was this white Tesla. I assume it was hers. I don't know. But someplace else I was, and there was this big, big Navy Audi, which I assumed that was hers too. And she had it right there in front. And, there are only certain cars I like, and neither of those would be it. But anyway, so it was that. So, and I had my appointment with my ophthalmologist, and he recommended laser surgery. And so I was kind of surprised, because I think my eyes are in pretty good shape. And so I said, what is that for? And he said, well, for glaucoma. And I said, do I have glaucoma? And he said, no. And so I said, well, why would I need surgery for glaucoma? And he said, well, just in case, or, you might get glaucoma or something. And the whole thing, and I felt so sorry for him, because I have so much respect for him. I think he's really a very good person, but I just don't know how sibling is able to turn people into people that aren't in their best selves, that aren't as far as I'm concerned, anyway. And so also I had taken an abnormal EKG there because, I have this issue with sibling kind of interfering in my medical care, as she did with my parents. And of course, they both died, and I assume she is looking for the same thing for me. So she interferes in my medical care. And so I had an abnormal EKG, even though the cardiologist looked me straight in the eye and said, "Oh no, this is fine." and at the time, I didn't see it on the top where it said abnormal, so I didn't have an opportunity to really discuss it with him. But I thought, well, I'll take it to my cousin, and just in case he was going to put in any drops or anything that might affect my heart. So I showed him the EKG. And I said, I just wanted you to see this. And I said, what would what do you think about this? And he said, oh, I think it's fine. And I said, you think it's fine? Because then why is it written abnormal at the top? And he said, I don't know, but it looks fine to me. And I said, oh, okay, I get it. It's almost as if he doesn't need the money, so I don't see him to be looking for a direct deposit like most people that my sibling is in contact with. But I really felt badly because it was just, I felt very betrayed, actually, as I think was a natural response to what I was experiencing. But anyway, it was almost like in the last video I had talked about the mass hysteria of in Lord of the Flies, and the mass hysteria that the flying monkeys in my life have experienced, and what I've seen. And that is that there's so much rumor mongering, and there's so much gossiping, and there are so many lies being spread that people really don't know the truth. And so as they don't really want to be involved, I think. I mean, some people that are looking for payouts are, but not everyone is interested in that, because these are there are many very successful people that I've seen do really really shameful things, actually. But anyway, so that was that. And then just 2 days ago, I had a dental appointment, and I went to a new dentist. I'd gone before, and he had done the x-rays, and so I was going to have another dental cleaning. And as soon as I came out of the driveway here, there was a gray Terminex car that actually kind of cut in front of me and then went on its way. And, because I was doused with the pesticide, my ex-husband had paid landscapers to spray me with a pesticide, and for 5 years I almost died from that. I'm highly sensitive to pesticides, and obviously my sister knows that. And so that's why I think, she might have people coming into the house and just kind of just spraying a little pesticide, just as an air freshener or whatever. But anyway, so as I'm driving along the expressway, all of a sudden there's another Terminex truck, that comes right in front of me. And it was a big gray Terminex truck. So I'm driving along, going to the dental appointment. And as I pull in the dental office, this is not, it's not a low income area. And yet, you don't see really fancy cars here. So the Tesla was unusual to see. If I were in Beverly Hills, that would just be one of many. But this was unusual. And then, so in this dental office, and this was at 8 o'clock in the morning was my appointment, there was a big black Bentley. And I thought, now that looks like what something sibling would buy. And I just wondered if it was with her 50% of the estate or my 50%. But in any event, yeah. So the big Terminex truck, and then I saw that. And then, for the last few days, I've been not feeling all that well. And I thought, I thought maybe it was the coffee, or maybe I thought it was the water, because the water's been tainted here. and things that I buy, or things that, if anything is left in the house, sometimes that, is available for people that enter, illegally entering and sabotaging food and water, and liquids. But what happened was I could smell it in my hands, and I thought, is it something I ate, or was it the soap, or was it, I just couldn't figure it out. And yet, I passed on the appointment, and I said, I'm just not feeling well enough, because I thought maybe I was going to start gagging, and it was just so horrible. And then when I came back, I was in my bedroom, and I was typing, and all of a sudden I was just hit with kind of like this really horrible gust of air, and I realized that it was like toxic fumes coming from the vents. And I have to say that in, I don't know, 3 or 4 of the residences where I have lived, the air conditioner all of a sudden, breaks or something, shuts down, and the poor homeowners have to buy a new air conditioning and heating unit. And so this happened here just about, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks ago. And what I realized is that the reason I left Scottsdale, Arizona, was because there were toxic fumes coming out of those vents. And so I'm thinking, well, that's one way of kind of like gassing people out, right? Although it seems more like that would be something from a concentration camp, not in 2022, right? In Florida, or Scottsdale, Arizona, or California, wherever else it's happened. And so, and there's always something weird, about the air conditioning unit. And this guy was referred by someone else, and he brought a unit in, and the barcode is kind of crossed out. So I'm not sure that there is that, they say, oh, it's a 15-year warranty. Well, if you call the company and they say, well, what's the barcode? And you say, I can't really read it, because it's like there's a Sharpie that has blacked it out. And they say, well, lady, you can't, how can we warranty something? We don't even know if this really, how long ago you had it or whatever. We have no knowledge. And then the guy was moonlighting, so we don't know. So it was like one thing after another. And so I'm thinking, then you have to step back, and then you say, I wonder, how did I get involved in this beastly satanic group, right? Headed by a cackling evil witch. And so you start to think about understanding. First, you have to understand what's going on, and then you can try to find the humor in it. And I've always been one for humor. And so I find many things funny, even when other people don't, because I kind of see how silly people behave. And so we have to understand that people play roles in our life. And sometimes when we have certain lessons to learn, we attract people who will give us those lessons, right? And so there are many shades and many aspects to the collective. And so there's good and there's bad, and there's positive and there's negative, and there's all of the things that are in between, right? Because it's like a gradient. And so, and as we evolve from darkness into light. And so if we see everything on planet Earth as a lesson, and it behooves us to learn the lesson sooner rather than later, I must say, because these are dangerous lessons as well. There is danger involved. And so it just really behooves us to have our eyes open, and to not get caught into the drama and the trauma that results, and yet to kind of see it from a higher perspective, to see our part in it too. I mean, we all play a part in everything that happens to us. And sometimes it's really hard to figure out now, how could we have avoided this? And I think most of the time it boils down to our suffering in silence. Because if we would stand up for ourselves, if we would draw attention to what's been going on, I think then it's almost like the Wizard of Oz. When somebody pulls the curtain back, all of a sudden he's like, oh, it's only me. But as long as we are in the audience and we see the smoke and this, voice that says you must do this and you must do that, well, then all of a sudden you're going to go, and then the flying monkeys come and the witch comes, and it turns into a circus. But if you can actually regain your composure and just say, okay, so what's the lesson? What am I here to learn? And what's the gift in it? And I remember this having repeated in Scottsdale, and actually in Scottsdale, and also in Paradise Valley in Arizona as well, where there was something with the hot water tank and the air conditioning and things like that, and there was a flood, and so it was my time to leave both of those places. And so now this is happening here. So it's interesting, because it's kind of like knowing, well, okay, this is perhaps an energetic realignment for me, but that doesn't mean I know where I'm going or what I am there to do. I know that for many of us, we're here to tell our truth and not be afraid, and know that by telling our truth, we are helping others become empowered and so that they can tell their truth. Because so much of the time we're alive here, we are in fear. And it's either fear or love. You can't be in both. You can't be afraid and yet really love. And so you have to, you can't be on both sides of the fence, right? And so as you let go of fear, then you can embody more love for not only yourself, because no one that's afraid really has self-love, because that's not what we're here. We're not here to just cringe and be in a state of angst and anxiety and fear, right? We're here to be confident. We're here to be empowered. We're here to be truthful. We're here to be honest and loyal and responsible and kind and loving and nurturing and all the wonderful things that we really are, and that some of us have allowed the outside world to rob us of it. And that's tragic, really. And so I think that for me, at least, and you all know my story, but for me, it was all about, there was so much darkness that wanted to separate me from my money. And I allowed it, because I was just, once all of a sudden everything you have is on your back, right? And then you think, well, I can't. I've interviewed 30 lawyers already and no one will take my case. I think, well, I certainly spoke to at least 12 lawyers just this year. And before, I had actually had at least another dozen. And then I did hire one attorney, and he was the only one that would take it. And then after 4 months, he gave up, because he said, I can't represent you, because the other side isn't cooperating, so they won't even share the documents that they've filed. And I think they've basically told me I'm going to lose. And so he withdrew. And so that kind of, again, that really pummeled me, really. It was so oppressive, right? How could you feel empowered when you have no legal counsel? And we're in the United States of America. We are all entitled to legal representation. But if, as one attorney told me, he said, we aren't allowed to represent you. And I thought, well, who said that? How can you not be allowed? I mean, unless it comes from the Oval Office, I don't know. I don't know who can tell you or not. And he said, no one in the entire state of Florida is allowed to represent you. And I thought, well, there's something I'm missing here. What is it? And so I basically went into seclusion. I went into hiding, and I then went to shelters, and then I started making videos about homeless people because I thought, okay, well, that's what this is about, right? I was to lose my home and lose everything I had and kind of walk the streets of the ghetto and not be afraid, learn to not be afraid. Even when the guy sitting next to me on the bus had a conversation with somebody and he said, yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to kill them. And I thought, oh, why am I sitting next to this guy? And then I go and get off the bus, and then he gets off the bus after me, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And this was in Long Beach, California. And I thought, oh my gosh, where there were bars on the windows and stuff. And I was really afraid. And yet when I got off the bus, I know I'm off on a tangent now, but when I got off the bus and this guy followed me off the bus, and as I was walking along, he was walking along, and I all of a sudden turned around. I did a U-turn, and I went in the other direction. And fortunately, he didn't. He looked at me, and then he kept going. And then I actually felt like, you know what, I missed the lesson because I was afraid, and that's why I got off, and that's why I turned around. I should have just gone ahead and done what I needed to do, because sometimes we just need not cower in fear and know that we are divinely protected, no matter what that looks like, no matter what that feels like. When you know that you are doing the right thing, then keep on keeping on, or whatever they say, right? So anyway, I didn't tell you, and this is something that you might find rather interesting, is when I was in Arizona, I met someone who came up to me at a church, and he said, I think I'm supposed to help you. And I said, really? And I had just left that house with the toxic fumes, and I didn't know where I was going to go or what I was going to do. And he said, I think I'm supposed to help you. And I said, oh, okay, tell me. And he said, let's go to lunch. So I met him at church. He seemed okay. So we started talking, and many people knew him. So I thought, okay. So we started talking, and we ended up talking for like 10 hours. And he told me he was, by profession, he was an exorcist. And I had never met an exorcist before. And he told me he was actually ill. He was suffering from a form of cancer. And he said he had been so beaten down because there's so much intense spiritual warfare going on the planet now. And really, as much as I really like to hear, kind of the beyond the bizarre renditions of things, this really blew my mind too, because I wouldn't even see The Exorcist, the movie, because some people had told me that they couldn't sleep for a week after seeing it. So I thought, I don't watch scary movies. I don't even like Halloween, but I really don't watch scary movies at all, because I would be totally freaked out by it. So anyway, he said that he confronts dark entities, and that dark entities attach to people to do evil, and that a lot of people end up getting dark entities when they are in kind of low vibrational surroundings. For instance, a bar. A bar would be a place where there are a lot of invisible dark entities that will latch on. Or if you have sex with someone who hasn't been the most careful with selecting their partners, right? And I guess you can be very careful with selecting your partners and still have a problem. But at the same time, if you drink a lot of alcohol, if you do drugs, if you, maybe if you gamble, I'm not sure. It's kind of the addictions because it's almost as if dark energy creates that addiction, and whether it's a sex addiction or some other addiction. And so and people do black magic, I guess, on people for to create addictions for them. And again, you know what? This is really beyond what I know and really beyond what I understand. But I was fascinated by this man who actually, priests call him from all over the country and ask him when someone seems to have some type of a possession or whatever. They call him when they can't figure it out. And so, and he's been hired to travel all over and work on houses that that when the owner passed, for some reason he didn't go to a different dimension, and he might be stuck between dimensions or something. Anyway, this man told me that he felt and he could feel things, you know, and he was very intuitive. And he said he felt that there were attachments that had attached themselves to me from the dark, and they wanted my money, and they wanted to silence me because they saw me as a threat. And so I found this rather mind-boggling, actually. And so he said, because the dark, their goal is to steal and to destroy, and to keep the light from shining. And sometimes, he said, when it's so obvious that people, you know, want to tell the truth, and that people, you know, love their life, and people want to help, and people are kind and smile and are positive, and, you know, are really really here to help and to serve and to do good for everyone, then that's kind of who the dark targets. And I thought, oh my gosh. And that he felt that family members then become the dark as well. And so then they become part of the problem. And I said, oh, well, you have no idea, because, you know, my family certainly has shown to be people that I never imagined that they would be, right? Because I grew up in this wonderful, closely knit Greek family, and all of a sudden people were dying and losing things, and it was really horrible, and it was quite noticeable, actually. And then, of course, you know what happened to my parents, and then what happened to the estate and my children and everything else. So it was just really just a total debacle. But anyway, so the dark energy tries to suppress the good and the light and the truth. And that's what the dark lives for, right? And from this man, I learned that dark energy is, it's called out, and it's given the choice to transform into the light, into love and kindness and goodness, or to stay in this low vibration where they are. And as the earth now is elevating and is raising its vibration, you know, the lower vibratory beings will not be able to stay, because this energy here that we are all trying to manifest is inhospitable to the lower energies. And so it's interesting, because earthly life here has changed. So it's a whole different thing, right? With artificial intelligence and robots and aliens and all kinds of things now. It's not the Beaver Cleaver, Ozzie and Harriet, Bewitched. Well, she was kind of a little different, but you know what I mean. It's not that kind of mom and pop thing. I mean, here you have social media, you have children who don't know what it's like to have dinner, a family dinner, because everyone is either on their phone or eating at different times, or you have all these broken families, and you know, it's difficult. It really is difficult. At the same time, let's see. So it was he was he was experiencing a lot of spiritual warfare. And so he asked me if I would help him, as he would sometimes be tackling these situations. He needed me to actually pray at the same time that he was doing that. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. And so he taught me a lot about warfare prayers and things like that. And he knew so much about all the things that I felt that I had experienced, with all the monitoring and the surveying and the cameras and the sabotage and all of that. I mean, I guess people that deal with dark energies understand that that is a manifestation of very demonic energy. And so I know when I mentioned, I just wanted to add one thing, because in number 43, when I had said that my mail was forwarded to Batesville, Indiana, and illegally, because all of a sudden it stopped coming to my condo. And I assume my ex or my son had illegally, that's a felony, but they had illegally forwarded my mail to Batesville, Indiana. I didn't get the notification from the IRS, so they did a tax lien. The student loan, my son's student loan that I was responsible for, went into default. And then for 2 years, the utilities of my condo, after they had changed the locks and I couldn't even get in, but for 2 years, my name was on the utility account. And so I was being charged hundreds of dollars for somebody else, for my son who stole my home, to have all this wonderful electricity and whatever else, all the different, televisions and internet and everything else. And so that actually was an issue, and it ruined my credit, actually. But so there was that. I wanted just to mention that. I'm just trying to think off a checklist of things that I wanted to cover this time. But the big thing, really was about The Exorcist. And then the other thing is that what I really talk about a lot is, and I mentioned it in the last video, was the Hippocratic Oath, and how doctors, seem to have kind of lost their way, at least when it comes to my situation. And yet I want to make sure that I express myself correctly, that I'm not bashing medicine by any means at all, because that really is where my loyalty lies. I studied medicine. I love the medical practice. I have been on both sides of the equation. And I have 4 generations in my family. My grandfather was a physician. My father was a physician. His brother was a physician. My mother's brother was a physician. And in my generation, I have 3 first cousins that are physicians. In the next generation, the 4th generation, I have a son who's a physician. So I am not by any means discrediting or disparaging physicians, not by any means. But what I have seen in regards to my own case, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell you the truth. And again, this is all about our telling the truth, because for years I didn't say anything. And so right now, my mother and my father died in hospitals due to, I think, malpractice, due to poor medical care. Absolutely. I also believe that with me, for some reason, whether it's my sibling or whether it's someone else that I am unaware of, that there is a directive in order to sacrifice my life when it comes to my medical care. So whether it's going 4 times for a crown that doesn't fit, and so it has ruined my my ability to chew on one side of my mouth, and yet I paid, I don't know, $1,800, $1,400 for a crown, and 4 times, they said, oh yes, it's our mistake, it's our mistake. Well, how many times are you going to cement in the crown and then crack it open? because it didn't fit. And then they said, oh, no problem. We're going to, give you another crown. We're going to make one at our expense because we've made it wrong. And then you do it again. And they said, come back in 3 months. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And then by the 4th time, you just say, you know what? I don't think you're competent. And of course, you're not going to refund my money, right? But whether or not, in terms of medicine, whether or not certain scans are not read properly. So I've seen radiologists who have totally missed an organ. And so I find that really quite distressing, actually. Or blood tests that are of questionable accuracy, or x-rays that must be repeated ad nauseum, right? So that you have all of this extra radiation, right? Or an MRI who, after I'm told by the tech, oh, the MRI is finished, and yet they don't let you up from the table, and they just keep pounding you with more and more of that power. It's a magnet. And so I have found, and I had actually a kidney procedure, and yet it didn't, it was negligible. There was no, it was with sound waves. It was called lithotripsy, and it was with sound waves to break up a kidney stone. Well, in fact, after the procedure, the kidney stone was intact. So I had to pass it several months later and undergo quite a bit of pain, actually, as anyone who has had a kidney stone would confirm to you. So I'm not sure. I feel that, as I mentioned in the last video when I talked about the book Lord of the Flies, there does become this mass hysteria. And when someone feels like that they aren't getting the right care, or if someone feels like they're being jeopardized in some way, then and there is someone who says, oh, she's coming into your office, so don't do this or do that, or don't give her the care, or do this, tell her to take this medicine, or tell her she can't get that scan here, or whatever, or give her 2 scans or whatever. Anyway, as that happens, there does become this kind of mass hysteria, because people then get on the payroll, right? And so as they get on the payroll, it just becomes like, oh my gosh, okay, so what do we have to do for the next check? What do we have to do for the next direct deposit? Oh, you have to betray her here. You have to tell her this. You have to lie to her. You have to, go into her house and take something. You have to do this and that. And it kind of is like, it just goes on and on and on, and it just increases and crescendos. And that's just so crazy. And then when you've got people now, because it's happening all over the world, people are feeling so inadequate that they take out their frustrations on others. And so as they feel this level of inadequacy, they project that onto others. So what they do is they disparage others, and they will criticize them, and they will belittle them, and they will defame them. And so what happens is you have all these people in high positions who have been told all of these erroneous things about you. And so you've got people saying, well, we can't really get into her condition because we'd be violating HIPAA laws. And so basically they can say anything, and it leaves it to your imagination. So what are they intimating? Oh, schizophrenia? Oh, bipolar? Is she bipolar? Is she neurotic, psychotic, depressed? What else? Narcissistic, psychopathological, whatever. It can be any of those. And so you've got all these people who just, and then they get on the phone and they say, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And so you just have all of this insanity. And that's what is happening with all these eclipses and things that are going on astrologically. People have pretty much lost their minds. And so Anyway, I wanted to just kind of bring that to your attention. And so, and I told you about the video I made when I was in that shelter, it's called A National Crisis. And I made it, I think, in 2014. And so I did believe truly that I was to raise the awareness of people who had lost their homes. And I must say it was a very valuable lesson for me, because I got to know people that under other circumstances I would have never met, right? I never even had spoken to a homeless person before I became one, right? And so, so sometimes we do find the positive in the most in the most abysmal situations, right? In the most tragic situations. I mean, somebody would say, oh my God, you not only were you homeless and you were in 3 different shelters, but you lived in your car for a year. I mean, oh my gosh, what could be worse than that? Well, you know what? Sometimes as we're going through it, we're in survival mode, and so we can get through almost anything. Now, in retrospect, when I think about that, I truly don't know how I did it. I don't know how I survived when I truly was terrified, and when I was witnessing crimes left, right, and center, and I did feel very, very vulnerable. And yet, it allowed us to grow, just like being married to, someone who cheated on us, right? And so if we think of, oh my gosh, what can we do now? Oh, he's a cheater. Oh my gosh, I'm going to cry. And oh, he's ruined my life and blah, 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 blah. So you can think about that. Or you can think that perhaps, and you could look in the mirror, right? And you could say, well, my hips are too big. My boobs are too small, so maybe he just didn't find me attractive or whatever, right? That would be one approach. And so another approach would be to think, thank you for revealing who this person was that didn't deserve me to begin with, right? And so because we deserve loyalty, if you're in that type of a relationship, we deserve loyalty, we deserve sacred intimacy, we deserve to be appreciated. We are the goal, we are the prize, right? And they should feel like they are our prize. And so we're not an option. And so when in any situation we can really turn it around, and we can say, we have to forgive the BS that these idiots have created, and they are acting like monsters on earth, but they're just so steeped in darkness that they would stoop to the level of actually creating a situation where there are toxic fumes through the vents. And my friend and I that I live with here temporarily, when I told him about the toxic fumes, he said, look, come on, we're going to go look at this air conditioning unit, and you're going to see that it would go to all the different rooms, right? The pipes, whatever, would go to all the rooms. And so you can't have just toxic fumes going to your room, right? And he'd say, so you know what, it's not, you're just imagining it, or maybe it's something else outside, or something under, maybe there's, an animal or something that died under the bed. I don't know. But anyway, and I thought, no, perhaps there is something in the vent. And so as the air rushes through, then it actually spews it through the vent, because I knew what I was smelling. And it was, at one point I thought it was gasoline water. I thought they'd put gasoline in the water, because I would just, if I didn't have anything all day to eat or drink, because I was trying to see what was the problem, and I would drink some water, and all of a sudden it would be like gasoline. And so I realized that then I would smell it on my hands and I'd smell it on my clothes. And I thought, oh, it really is. It's coming through the vents. And this very same thing happened in Arizona when they had gotten a new air conditioning system, and also in another Arizona residence. So, you know, these people that actually install these air conditioning units, they've sold their soul, right? And also the people who have contacted them and told them to do it, they've certainly sold their soul, whether that was my family, whether that was their attorneys, whether that was someone else involved, that of whom I am unaware. I don't know. But sometimes there's no hiding who we think we are and what we think we can get away with. And so what we say and what we do, which is kind of the whole thing about our thoughts manifest, and our words have a lot of power, and our actions reveal really who we are. So our thoughts, words, and actions, that really is who we are, what we are, how we think, what we do. Yes, it's all of that. And so we are held accountable whether we know it or not. And so both for our positive and negative behaviors. And so when I think of people who, when I think of like my children, when I think of my family members, I would think that they'd want to stay out of jail. Well, if they wanted to stay out of jail, maybe they shouldn't be doing the things that they're doing, right? So there are consequences to everything that we do, right? And so we do need to stand up for ourselves. We need to tell the truth. We need to stop circulating lies and gossip and rumors, because we never know if it's true or not, and it's really none of our business anyway. But we have compassion when we have been the butt of the rumor mongering. Then we really see when someone says, oh yeah, well, you know what, she had an affair, or she's a druggie, or she's this or she's that, and then you think, oh, you know what, somebody said that about me, and that's just like totally untrue. And so why would I necessarily think that that was true about anybody else? Because people are they're so hurting inside that they keep spreading this stuff. And it's really gross. It really is gross. And I know so many of us have thought that the truth would have come out a long time ago. I certainly did. And I really thought the light was going to illuminate the darkness. And certainly it's been 40 years since I first married a psychopath. But and that seems like that should have been a long time for the truth to come out. But the poor guy's no longer on the planet. But anyway, I think, we face our consequences of the wrath of others. And so it's important that we stand up for ourselves, and we know that everything happens in divine timing. And really, what is divine timing? Divine timing is when we're ready for it, when we're ready to take a new approach, when we're ready to go in a different direction. Sometimes, good people experience things that are really tough, and it toughens us, it matures us, it helps us grow. And so we have to see the goodness in that, because we can't just stay quiet, which is what I thought was the most dignified way of handling something. I saw my mother, who never really spoke ill of anyone, and yet she deteriorated from a beautiful woman into this corpse on a bed, on a hospital bed, well, on an assisted living bed, due to her own daughter starving her to death. And so had my mother been more assertive, had my mother stopped my sister from doing the crazy things that we all saw her doing as an adolescent and as a young adult and as even a grown woman, perhaps, that would have never happened. And yet, because we think about the lioness, right? Think of the lioness in the jungle. And so if 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 someone tried to take the lioness's children from her, what do you think would have happened? Do you think she would have just kind of crawled into a hole and said, oh, I know that my sister and my son are just so evil, but I don't know what to do because I've interviewed 30 attorneys and no one will take my case. And so I'll just go into a shelter and hope God will take care of it. Well, eventually, the energy changes and we realize who we are and that we're not here to suffer. And so as the lioness wouldn't put up with losing her own children, we need to stand up for ourselves too, right? And as I think of, in terms of my family, my son, if he had any self-respect at all, he certainly would not have participated in this disgusting roadshow, of people. I mean, really, we've traveled, certainly I've traveled in virtually, I don't know, so many different states as a homeless person, right? Just kind of driving along thinking, well, let's see, maybe I should move here and maybe I can get a job here and what can I do and where can I go? And so when, I had my home, I had access to, so much money, it was unbelievable. And yet somebody just, changes your name, crosses out your name, puts their own and goes to the bank and all of a sudden they get everything. Or they hire an attorney and the attorney goes to the judge and the judge says, oh, okay, this is all yours. Meanwhile, somebody else is, in another part of the country so broke that they couldn't even travel, didn't even know that there was a court case going, right? If you don't get served, you don't even know. And so they can just kind of railroad you. But anyway, we're talking now about, as far as my children and as far as the people in my family, I didn't know that people play that dirty. Actually, my children were raised with a silver spoon and they had manners and they had education and they sure should have known better. And so in the end, they ended up playing with dirt and they've gotten dirty. And so I don't know what's going to happen to them. I don't know if their crimes will be exposed. I don't know if there are consequences. I know spiritually, definitely, and that there are consequences, but I don't really know how it's going to appear in physical reality. And it's really not for me to know. And I really, I think that that's between them and their God, right? And so if my children harbor such hatred toward their own mother, and as they, continue to live a fabulous life, not knowing if I'm dead or alive or whatever, then, I feel sorry for them. Because certainly if my mom and dad were alive, I treasured every moment with them. And so I think that when we see someone who doesn't have respect for their own parents, or for family in general, then what kind of a person is that? And so anyway, I don't want to belabor this, but because there are so many things going on behind the scenes, and we are experiencing so much soul growth as we encounter more and more types of people and situations and circumstances. And so every day we are learning lessons, and every day is an opportunity to be better than we were yesterday. And so if we drop the drama and the trauma and those who create it, right, via their jealousy and envy, then that's how we can move forward in life. And so anyway, I thank you so much for being with me here today. It was kind of a ramble session, but I was really excited about it. There was so much I wanted to tell you. And so I hope that this helps you in some way, as you might take a moment to think about some of the things that we've covered today. And so just keep going and be strong, be that lioness. Don't let anybody push you around, and know that you are here for a purpose, and whatever that might be. And so anyway, I'm very grateful for your presence here, however limited my audience is because of the people at YouTube or Vimeo or Facebook or Instagram or whatever out there, you know. Whoever tries to limit it. And I don't blame them because they don't know me from Bozo, right? It's just if someone has the directive, just like some of the doctors, well, if, you know, if all of a sudden you get a call that says, you know, don't treat her, you know, we know from her last blood test that we didn't tell her that, you know, there's this going on and that going on. And so we don't want her to know because we don't want her to get the help. And so, again, I hope I'm wrong with all of this. Truly, I do, because it's a sad commentary on human beings, actually, that they could be so jealous and so envious and so materialistic that they don't want the truth to come out. Because if the truth came out, then all the money that they've stolen from me, they'd be made to return it, right? And so this way, if they can just kind of get rid of me, then they can go shopping. What can I say? For another Bentley, for another Tesla, for another Audi, for who knows, you know, if what do they say? What is the saying? There's nobody more poor than a rich person or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, you know what I mean. It's kind of like if money is your God, then well, what did Jesus say about going through the it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich person to go to heaven? I think that's what it is. Anyway, we'll see, because I've known a lot of really wonderful rich people. And at one time, I was one of them. And so, anyway, so have a great weekend, and I will connect with you soon. And I